Taika Waititi is a director, screenwriter, and actor from New Zealand. Early in his career, he directed episodes of Flight of the Conchords for HBO. His 2016 movie Hunt for the Wilder People became the highest-grossing New Zealand film in history. So here's the question. What does Taika Waititi do next? He takes some of that flavor, smuggles it into a $180 million Marvel superhero movie. Thor Ragnarok stars Chris Hemsworth, Kate Blanchett, Anthony Hopkins, and many more. It opens tomorrow. Taika Waititi is the film's director. He's in studio with me live now, and I feel like when I said that budget, it was the first time you had heard it too, judging by where your face went when I said
see any of that.
How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So what's the story here? I hear that part of the reason you got this gig is something to do with a sizzle reel, which is typically the best of your career, but it wasn't just the best of your career. It was a bunch of different clips.
It was the best of other people's careers. There were no clips of my own in the sizzle reel.
So why did you show
the sizzle reel? Since I made one and one only in my career, which is this one that got me the job, turns out is something to kind of help convey tonally what you were planning to do with the film, and because there was no story when I went in. They didn't have a story or any ideas really. They just said, "Well, we want to give him a haircut, and Bruce Banner should be in the movie, and we want it to be fun." So I cut together little clips and shots. I basically illegally torrented, and ripped clips from the internet
of a bunch of different movies.
And I don't mind saying that on the radio.
No, that's okay.
You can cut that out.
Yeah, sure can. Yeah.
And then I put the whole thing to "Immigrant Song" by Led Zeppelin, which if you've seen the finished film of Thor, it's in the film too. So they watched that and they were impressed by that, and then they instantly asked, "Oh well, we should maybe look at the getting the rights to the song as well, because it's so perfect for the film that doesn't exist."
With all due respect, people who make films like yours in the past
don't do movies like this.
Don't do Thor Ragnarok movies like this. Why did you want to do it?
I think because it was something unexpected for myself, something unpredictable. I just didn't. I was starting to feel like I might, be repeating myself. When I was editing Hunt for the Wilder People, when they gave me the call and said, would I be interested in this movie? And then they, it was just something that I felt like this could be a career ender in a good way. This could be something that, the idea of it makes me very nervous, and I know that when I've felt like that in the past, it's been a good thing creatively. Is
there similarities though? I mean, I'm kind of painting like it's two completely different worlds, like making more of an indie film.
They are very similar.
Like what?
And the way that you get into these things, the way that I could kind of make myself feel like I had something to offer, and that I guess somehow that there was an in for me creatively, was to think of this thing like an independent film. So, when you look at the story, it's just about a guy trying to get home because there's a burglar in his house, right. And he's trying to get home, across the, just happens to be across the universe that he's trying to travel. But this is really like after hours, set in space. He's like accompanied by his annoying brother and a drunk chick and this bipolar guy who's prone to temper tantrums. And if you think about it like that, just the simplicity of the story, that's my in. That's the way that I can figure out how to make these characters more relatable to the audience, and humanize them a bit more.
But were there moments really that you may have been a bit daunted, a bit like, oh my God, what am I after getting myself into?
Only the very first time that I really got the job, and I thought, okay, well,
But it wasn't walking on set and going like, oh
no,
God.
no, and the reason really is because I've done a few big commercials, a few Super Bowl commercials and stuff like that. And I got to tell you, they're a pretty big deal when you shoot those things. Only thing is they're only a day long.
Yeah.
And this one,
they're 45 seconds.
85 days of shooting.
Oh, wow.
But we had about 9 months of pre-production and prepping. So I really got to know everyone, and you really just forming like a village. You're amassing all of your kind of troops and getting ready to go and to do this thing. So by the time it's day one of shooting, I was very comfortable with everyone. I knew everyone quite well. I like to foster a kind of a sense of peace and fun on my sets. So we play like a lot of music, and I like to create an environment where it's acceptable to give each other shit and to kind of a bit creatively feel like there's an open dialogue going on. So I encourage bad ideas. I encourage terrible ideas because I think from there, we often find more interesting creative solutions to things.
You also show up in the film. Let's take a listen to this. This is you in character talking to Chris Hemsworth's Thor.
Quite unique. It was made from this special metal from the heart of a dying star. And when I spun it really, really fast, it gave me the ability to fly.
You rode a hammer.
No, I didn't ride the hammer.
The hammer rode you on your back.
No. I used to spin it really fast, and it would pull me off
Oh, my God. The hammer pulled you off.
the ground. It would pull me off the ground up into the air, and I would fly. Every time I threw it, it would always come back to me.
Sounds like you had a pretty special and intimate relationship with this hammer, and that losing it was almost comparable to losing a loved one.
It's a nice way of putting it.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Q. I'm Tom Power. I'm speaking with the director of Thor Ragnarok, Taika Waititi.
How do they allow that accent into this giant movie?
That's just about what I'm going to ask, because so the producer of this segment, like the producer who worked on this with me, is from Australia.
Yes. And
Ashley Mack.
I instantly, as soon as that clip came up, I instantly looked over towards her because I knew that she would know that accent. That's like like anyone from Australia or New Zealand will recognise that as a very like colloquial, very rural New Zealand accent.
Right.
And it has these certain connotations, and we all know people like that.
But she was telling me that there's a lot of Australian, New Zealand references,
Huge
kind
amount,
of inside
there's
jokes.
stuff from this really, one of the great Australian comedies, The Castle. There's a lot of references from that, and
Did you have to sneak
all
these
the
in?
spaceships? All the spaceships in the film are named after Holdens, which is a type of car.
So was this did you have to sneak this in, or did you have to fight for these references?
No. I mean, that accent and that character. I always put myself in my films because I'm an egomaniac, and I love myself. But that character kind of came about because there were no more characters left. I knew I was going to play something, but he was only in maybe one or two scenes. And just reading through the script and the scenes with Chris, I just started playing with different accents and different characters and stuff, and that one just sort of came out. We just found it really funny coming from down there.
But you know what I'm saying? Like earlier when I was introducing you, I was talking about how there's a certain New Zealand, Australian brand of comedy that we've seen in your work before, so, in Flight of the Conchords and in your films. Even though this is a gigantic $73 billion film,
It's getting up there. The budget's getting
yeah.
bigger.
Well, every time I talk about it, it costs more. You wanted to put some of that flavor in there.
Yeah, and where we come from, and it's the same here as well. It's more the what we call the comedy of the mundane, which is really like, here's the difference. Most of these studio films, these blockbusters, the jokes that you hear were written about a year before they started shooting. In a boardroom with a couple of dudes all patting each other on the back for coming out with a quip. I use the script as a suggestion. So when we turn up to set, it's like, how do we make this funnier, and how do we drag the joke on and keep it going? And why don't we make fun of how boring these moments are in these films?
But these aren't typically things that happen in superhero movies.
No, that's right, and that's why I'm surprised that and pleasantly surprised that we were able to do that. But this is a very it does have a very New Zealand or British or Australian flavour to it, humour-wise. The jokes do go on, and they go on to the point beyond when they're funny, and then we can even push them a bit further until they become funny again.
I mean, you had Australians in this. You had Chris Hemsworth. You had Kate Blanchett. You even had Carl Urban.
Well, contractually, we were forced to use them.
Yeah. But did that make it a bit easier?
Well, not everyone's funny.
But did it make it easier to put these jokes in, knowing that they would get them?
Oh, because they're Australians. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's more. My thing really is what I find funny are things where Hulk and Thor would be sitting on a bed after having an argument and talking about feelings, because I've never seen that before in a superhero movie, and I find that kind of thing hilarious, because it's like when you see how ridiculous these over the top these characters are, and then have them talking about stuff that we all talk about, after we've had an argument. That to me is that is hilarious to me.
You must be very proud of this film. It's doing very well, critically.
It is doing very well critically.
Yeah, 96% rating on Rotten Tomatoes right now.
Yeah, and people don't want to like superhero movies.
I'm not going to.
It's like you go into these critics will go in just they feel like they don't want to like these films, and what's been great is they despite themselves, they've enjoyed it.
Because when I said the 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, you put a face on that was a little bit like, wow, I just woke up. Like I think you can't believe it either.
I want to know who the
$4%.
4% are. Let's go find them. Let's find the names.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah, no. Well, I think in general for superhero movies, it's always hard to tell, especially making these things yourself. And with any film, I feel like this. When I'm editing, I'm like, God, is this the end? I guess I've had a good run. This could be the end of the career. That's all right.
It felt like a risk.
It felt like a risk. And who knows if anyone's going to like this stuff? 6 months into the edit, you can never tell. As long as I like it, I think that's all. And my mum, that's all that counts.
How did she like it?
She's loved it. She loved it.
What did you learn from making
She's one of the 96%.
What did you learn from making this film, this gigantic $143 trillion film, that you
It's
can
climbing? It's staggering how much this budget is now.
that you can take back when you make your next films, or will you go back to making smaller films?
I'm going back to make my smaller ones. I've got some screenplays that I've been holding on to that I'm going to do. And I actually really like my screenplays. I think they're pretty good. So I'm excited to go back and do those. And then I'd like to come back and do something else here. That kind of one for them, one for you kind of scenario.
But are you going to take anything from the making of Thor Ragnarok back to these smaller films? Did you learn anything?
I don't know if I learned anything.
Really?
I don't know. I feel like I sort of brought so much of myself and my style of filmmaking to this that I've completely changed the cinematic landscape forevermore.
Never again will films be the same. There has to be something you're bringing back.
For sure. I mean, I think the experience just how long this thing was, 85 days of shooting. All my films were 25 days. I mean, one thing I did learn was how to try and, maintain my energy and keep that stamina, because it's so exhausting. And yeah, it's fun and you're working, you're basically telling jokes all day, but it's stressful. It is stressful. I don't carry my stress from the neck up. It's all underneath, so you would never notice that. You probably look at me right now and think, oh, he's the most carefree guy in the world. But from down here, I'm a wreck.
You're a wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn, I'm guessing, that sometimes big risks pay off.
Yeah. So do I push it in the next one and do something even crazier, like Police Academy 20?
Weekend at Bernie's 43.
Just skip all of the other numbers and go straight to 20, because that's a cooler number than 7.
Taika Waititi, thanks for coming in and talking to me.
Thanks for having me.